80 boats, not missiles, not submarines, not stealth aircraft. 80 Iranian IRGC fast attack boats, launched simultaneously from 4 coastal positions, moving in 4 coordinated columns across the Strait of Hormuz, bow to bow, lane to lane. A physical wall of Iranian naval presence stretched across the most important 21 miles on the surface of the earth. Behind them, 8 heavy cargo vessels, moving slowly toward anchor positions in the center of the strait, the immovable anchors that would make the blockade permanent. Above them, 6 Iranian maritime patrol aircraft, broadcasting on international maritime frequencies. In this scenario, the Strait of Hormuz is closed, effective immediately. Tehran's calculation was precise and brutal. 840,000 barrels of oil flow through this corridor every single hour. Unstop that flow, even for 24 hours, and the global economy enters emergency mode. Oil prices spike 60% before London opens. 14 governments activate strategic reserves simultaneously. Supply chains fracture across 3 continents, and Washington faces a choice that has no clean answer. Fire on Iranian vessels in front of the entire world, and own the escalation. Or negotiate, accept Iranian terms, concede the strait, 80 boats, 8 cargo vessels, the most audacious economic warfare gambit in Persian Gulf history. In this simulation, it lasted 44 minutes. Because USS Gerald R. Ford did something that Tehran's planners had never factored into their calculations. It responded instantly, completely. And with weapons Iran had no answer for. This is that story. In this scenario, to understand why Iran's blockade doctrine collapsed, you need to understand the assumption it was built around. Hesitation. For 2 decades, Tehran had studied American responses to Iranian provocations in the Persian Gulf. Tanker seizures, harassment of naval vessels, drone attacks, mine-laying operations. The pattern was consistent. American responses were measured, diplomatic, carefully calibrated to avoid escalation. Iran built their blockade doctrine around that pattern continuing. 80 boats are not a military force designed to fight USS Gerald R. Ford. They are a political statement designed to force a negotiation. The physical presence in the shipping lane creates a dilemma that military force alone cannot easily resolve, because firing on 80 boats in front of international media creates its own strategic costs for Washington. Tehran calculated those strategic costs were higher than the cost of negotiating. They forgot one thing. In this simulation, U.S. Naval Command had been tracking the 80 boats since they left their harbors. 3 hours and 17 minutes of preparation. A response package already authorized, already launched, already in position before the last Iranian boat reached its blockade station. The hesitation Tehran was counting on never came, because the decision had already been made. Here is what made this scenario completely one-sided from the moment the blockade activated. Iran's blockade doctrine had one genuine vulnerability. It required communication. 80 boats operating across a 21-mile strait in 4 coordinated columns, maintaining formation, responding to U.S. movements, coordinating with cargo vessels and patrol aircraft, requires a communication network functioning continuously. The EA-18G Growler is specifically designed to make that impossible. 4 Growlers had been airborne since 1:43 a.m., 1 hour and 41 minutes before the blockade activated. Their mission was not jamming. It was intelligence collection. Recording every frequency Iran's blockade coordination used during the final approach, every column-to-column channel, every cargo vessel link, every patrol aircraft protocol. By the time the blockade activated, the Growlers had a complete electronic map of every communication system holding the operation together. An activation to complete Iranian naval communication blackout, 5.7 seconds, 80 boats, all still in position, all now unable to talk to each other or to IRGC command. A blockade that required coordination suddenly had none. And orbiting at 15,000 feet above the Strait, 2 A-10 Thunderbolt IIs, armed with APKWS rockets, $22,000 per precision engagement against IRGC fast attack boats worth less than a pickup truck. The cost equation that Iran had spent 2 decades studying, the equation that made defending against swarm tactics financially unsustainable for the U.S. Navy, had flipped. 80 boats, 38 APKWS rockets per A-10, 2 A-10s. In this scenario, the math was never in Tehran's favor. 3:24 a.m., 80 IRGC boats complete blockade formation, 8 cargo vessels moving to anchor positions. Iranian maritime patrol aircraft broadcasting Strait closure on international frequencies. 3:25 a.m., USS Gerald R. Ford, commanding officer transmits on international maritime frequency. All Iranian vessels, you are conducting an illegal blockade of an international waterway. Clear the strait immediately. 3:26 a.m., Iranian IRGC naval commander responds, the Strait of Hormuz is Iranian sovereign water. All foreign military vessels exit immediately. 3:27 a.m. In this scenario, EA-18G growlers activate, 5.7 seconds. Every Iranian naval communication frequency across the strait, dark. 4 baud columns lose coordination simultaneously. Cargo vessels lose contact with IRGC command. Patrol aircraft lose tactical data link. 80 boats and 8 cargo vessels, all in position. They all now completely isolated from each other and from any command authority. 3:28 a.m., P-8A, Poseidon transmits complete targeting package via Link 16. All 80 boat positions, all 8 cargo vessels, all 6 patrol aircraft, firing solutions for every asset in the Iranian blockade formation, transmitted simultaneously to all American shooters. 3:29 a.m., first a 10 descends from 15,000 feet, tactical display, 80 glowing target icons. The pilot selects the northern column, the primary blockade line across the main shipping lane. 3:30 a.m., first APKWS engagement, laser designation, rocket motor ignites, guidance fins deploy, engine transom, direct hit, lead boat dead in the water, second boat, third, fourth. Northern column develops its first gap in 60 seconds, the physical blockade line beginning to open. 3:31 a.m., second to 10 engages southern column, same sequence, engine kills, gaps appearing in the southern lane blockade line, both shipping lanes, beginning to open simultaneously. 3:32 a.m., USS Gerald R. Ford launches 8 F/A-18 Super Hornets. Harpoon anti-ship missiles, targeting all 8 cargo vessels, the permanent blockade anchors that were supposed to make the strait closure irreversible. 3:33 a.m., in this simulation, Harpoon missiles reach cargo vessels, sequential impacts, all 8 cargo vessels disabled within 4 minutes, drifting, unable to reach anchor positions, the permanent elements of Tehran's blockade, neutralized before they anchored. 3:35 a.m., in this scenario, B-2 Spirit stealth bombers activate over 4 IRGC coastal bases, the bases that launched the 80 boats. Key the bases that would resupply and reinforce the blockade. Precision-guided munitions, all 4 bases neutralized simultaneously. No second wave coming. 3:37 a.m., a 10s complete third APKWS pass. Swarm countdown to 41. No coordination, no orders, no cargo vessel support, no resupply coming. Remaining boats beginning to break formation individually. 3:39 a.m., Virginia-class submarines transmit active sonar pings towards 6 Iranian Kilo submarines attempting to use blockade chaos as cover. In this simulation, all 6 immediately begin emergency withdrawal. 3:41 a.m., 6 Iranian maritime patrol aircraft, watching the blockade collapse below them with no way to coordinate a response, begin returning to base. 3:44 a.m., remaining Iranian boats attempting to flee, a 10s following. Short bursts across fleeing bows, boats stopping. its crews abandoning vessels, one by one, 3:47 a.m., both Hormuz shipping lanes, clear of all Iranian blockade vessels, 4:08 a.m., all operations complete, 44 minutes, 80 boats, blockade never achieved, 8 cargo vessels disabled, 4 coastal bases neutralized, 0 American casualties, 4:11 a.m. Ford commanding officer transmits routine navigation update. In this scenario, Strait of Hormuz, clear, transit continuing. In this scenario, what USS Gerald R4 did was not just defeat a blockade, it permanently changed the strategic calculation for every nation watching. Iran had invested years developing the Blockade Doctrine, studying American hesitation patterns, building a force structure specifically designed to exploit diplomatic costs. The 80-boat blockade was not an improvised operation. It was the culmination of a strategic theory about how to constrain American power in the Persian Gulf without triggering a military response Washington was willing to absorb. USS Gerald R. Ford answered that theory in 44 minutes, not by escalating diplomatically, not by convening international consultations, not by calculating the media optics of firing on Iranian vessels, by launching a response that had already been prepared for 3 hours and 17 minutes. That used weapons costing less than the boats they were neutralizing. That neutralized the blockade's communication architecture in 5.7 seconds. That eliminated the resupply bases before the blockade was fully formed. In this simulation, the historic element was not the firepower. It was the preparation, the patience. The 3 hours and 17 minutes of silent observation, followed by 44 minutes of complete response. Tehran spent years developing a doctrine to exploit American hesitation. USS Gerald R. Ford demonstrated that the hesitation they were counting on does not exist when the response has already been prepared. That changes everything for every navy, every doctrine, every strategic calculation about American power in these waters. Here is what this scenario proved about freedom of navigation. The Strait of Hormuz has never been closed. Not in 1973, not in 1980, not during the Tanker War, not during the Gulf War, not at any point in the modern era of global trade, not because of diplomacy, not because of international law, not because Iran lacked the motivation, because of USS Gerald R. Ford and the carrier strike groups that came before it, and the response architecture that makes 80 boats attempting a blockade a 44-minute problem rather than a strategic crisis. The EA-18G Growler made coordination impossible in 5.7 seconds. The APKWS rocket made the cost equation favor America for the first time in a swarm engagement. The B-2 Spirit eliminated the resupply bases before the blockade could be reinforced. And the A-10 Warthog, circling above the Strait for 44 minutes, ensured that no Iranian vessel could maintain blockade position, regardless of how determined their crews were. In this scenario, Iran deployed 80 boats to close the Strait of Hormuz. USS Gerald R. Ford was ready before the first boat left port. The strait is open, 840,000 barrels per hour, as it always has been, as it always will be. Because behind every tanker transiting the Strait of Hormuz, there is a $13 billion carrier. And behind that carrier, there is everything that makes a 44-minute response possible. The preparation, the patience, the precision, and the absolute certainty that the Strait of Hormuz will remain open, no matter what Tehran deploys. Here is what I want to know from you. In this scenario, USS Gerald R. Ford cleared Iran's 80-boat blockade in 44 minutes, using preparation that began 3 hours and 17 minutes before the blockade activated. Do you think the combination of EA-18G jamming, APKWS precision, and B-2 Spirit stealth has permanently ended the viability of Iran's blockade doctrine? Or will Tehran find a way to adapt that even this response architecture cannot counter? Comment below. I read every single one. If this breakdown changed how you understand freedom of navigation and carrier strike group power, hit the like button and subscribe. Because the next classified file is already being unlocked. Trust me, you will not want to miss it. The events, dialogues, military operations, and outcomes depicted in this video are entirely fictional and created purely for educational and entertainment purposes. This is a hypothetical what-if scenario based on publicly available information about real-world military capabilities, weapon systems, and geopolitical tensions. No part of this video should be interpreted as a factual report of real events. All military engagements, casualty figures, and operational details shown are dramatized and do not represent actual incidents. We do not glorify war or violence. Our goal is to analyze military technology and doctrine in an engaging format. Viewer discretion is advised.